Everyone who we have met with who knew her and all of her personal possessions indicate that she had a really strong sense of who she was, and she liked who she was, and she was happy being herself regardless of whether or not that fit in with social mores or social trends.
She could be a socialite one day and the life of the party, and then the next day she would be a clever businesswoman.
I can't say enough good about her. She was just a lovely, lovely woman, intelligent and kind to everybody, and also took care of herself.
She was born in Spokane in 1910 to Martin and Edwidge Woldson. She had a younger sister who was born, I think, 4 to 6 years later. She went to the Bay Area to the San Francisco College for Women. She studied history officially in college, but she also continued to study piano.
She was a lifelong artist, talented in piano and on the harp. She loved music, she loved the performing arts. These are the things that people might think of as upper class and elite, and only accessible to the elite, to the moneyed elite. But for Myrtle Woldson, I think the Performing Arts Center here makes the arts accessible for everyone.
As a young woman in society, an upper class woman, she was expected to be a part of society, to get along with other people, to be seen by everyone, and be seen and be talked about. And we know this because these newspaper clippings, she was all over the society pages. When she would host a luncheon, when she would host a party, or when she would attend a party, her name was in the paper with some comment about what she was wearing and how she looked. The home was always the anchor for her. She and her mother decorated it after they acquired it in the 40s, and then after her mother passed away in the 60s, she continued to decorate and redecorate. She was always moving things around, and that's something that everyone commented on. When they would go visit her, she would either have them help her move something, or she would quiz them on what she had moved. So she saw the house as something that was vibrant and changing, and it reflected her passions and interests.
We've reproduced 3 rooms from her home. The dining room, the formal dining room, the living room that housed her baby grand piano, and would have also been the stage for music concerts amongst family and friends. And then also what would have in her original home be a 2nd floor sitting room. It's odd to walk into a performing arts center, go up the stairs, and run into someone's living room. But it's also brilliant. As we've been installing all of the reproduction and the exhibits, every time I walk up those stairs and I see a glowing chandelier from the entry vestibule of her house, I want to go over there and look at it. I think one of the things that people who knew her would say about Myrtle Woldson is that she was always inspired to make the atmosphere around her special and more beautiful. She was always in pursuit of an idealized vision of beauty.
She loved her yard to the point where she had at one time, probably 30, 40 years ago at least, all the dirt taken out and all new dirt brought in, topsoil, which was the best she could get. And she had it tiered up so it's up from this side and then it drops down a total of 8 feet to the other side. The garden is a French garden in individual beds, and she would have them planted with her favorite colors, the pinks and all. Well, the shrubs were 8 feet higher at this low end of the yard than up here. And she would be upstairs in her room, and she'd be looking out as Dan Heller was on the ladder trimming these shrubs. And if it really wasn't right, wasn't straight, she had a bullhorn, and she'd get on the bullhorn a little lower on the right, a little lower on the right, so that when you look out the windows, you look at the city over Cliff Drive, but you don't see the asphalt.
The name Martin Woldson in the Spokane region is more well known than Myrtle Woldson. Martin was her father, and he made all of his money in railroads and mineral transportation around the turn of the century. So the assumption is that Myrtle Woldson came from money and inherited lots of money, but that's not really the case. She made significantly more than her father ever made in his lifetime.
After World War II, what we know about Myrtle Woldson is that she starts to, I think, reassess what it is she does, what she enjoys. Because by now she's in her late 30s and she's not married, which is something uncommon for women in her social set. Her dad offered her some money to buy new clothes or to go on a trip, and she decided to take that money and buy property in Spokane. Throughout the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and then the early 21st century, she continues to buy real estate. And she did this in a way that, as it turned out, was incredibly successful.
There was some land on Havermail Island for sale, and she wanted to buy it. She went to the bank to get it, and he tried to talk her out of it. He said, "That's worthless. It's just a bunch of rocks over there." She bought the land in spite of him trying to talk her out of it, and 3 couples came in and built the Travel Lodge. So here came Expo 74, and they needed that for the pavilions. He received for her land $416,000, which would be like saying at least 4 to 10 million now. And she said, "Just remember this, Dawn. Don't always listen to other people's advice because they might be wrong." And that banker was wrong.
She became a real estate businesswoman in the 1950s, when that was not something that women did. And then she started to give it away. And ultimately, she gave away her entire fortune. And Gonzaga was the biggest beneficiary of the fortune that she gave away.
She donated in several ways to Gonzaga. So she donated, obviously, the money for the Performing Arts Center, which we didn't have, so she was filling a lack for the Spokane community and for Gonzaga particularly. But that she also donated a separate set of funds to create a set of scholarships for students who might not otherwise have access to a Gonzaga education. So by virtue of that bequest, she's providing opportunities for students to pursue higher education and also pursue the performing arts. The gift of the Performing Arts Center provides access to different types of performing and visual arts than Spokane and the region has ever been able to host before.
She was the most outstanding person I ever knew. And look what she's done for Gonzaga.